Alex O'Connor and Craig Biddle recently had a debate about whether morality is subjective or objective. Although I agree with Craig's position that questions of morality have objectively right and wrong answers, I disagree with the way he makes his case in this particular debate. In short, Craig argues that objective morality can be grounded in the fact that living things want to remain alive. It is life that makes the concept of value even possible and necessary. Only living organisms have a unique tendency to pursue things, meaning they value them. For example, a tree values sunlight, a horse values hay, and we humans have all sorts of different values, such as fairness, freedom, loyalty, all of which are subsumed under the primary value of survival. In an attempt to rebut this, Alex asks us to consider a world in which humans found a cure for death. Would it suddenly be permissible for these now immortal humans to rape and murder?
I'd like you to imagine for a second an immortality pill that is discovered, invented by scientists, and perhaps to avoid some kind of overpopulation crisis, everybody sterilized at the discovery of this miraculous wonder drug. And at least some people take it, and they'll now live forever. And forget for a moment the sort of physical restrictions on this, the heat death of the universe. There's probably some way to imagine avoiding this inevitability. These people live forever. They're not going to die. Perhaps they're transported to some afterlife where they get to live forever in the New Jerusalem. Does ethics cease to exist? Does it no longer matter how I treat my fellow creature because the prospect of life and death is no longer on the table? That seems highly implausible to me.
If your intuition tells you that morality still applies even in this hypothetical world, then perhaps there's something missing in Craig's attempt at grounding every value in the avoidance of death. Craig counters by simply refusing to engage with Alex's hypothetical scenario.
And I always say, well, look, what's the purpose of this mind experiment when we're trying to figure out ethics for where we are here in this world living the way that we are? So the first thing I would say to this request is that not a lot hangs on it, if anything hangs on it, because no matter how I answer it, we still are not immortal, and we have to figure out how to live as human beings. Ethics is a practical subject. It's something that we need because we have to make life and death decisions, and decisions that are going to help us or harm us in life, how to set up relationships, businesses, societies, and all of that. So when we go to a wonderland of sorts and say, well, suppose that's not the case, but this other thing is the case, what would you do then? We're now really not dealing with ethics anymore. We're simply dealing with a different situation.
In a follow-up video, Craig clarifies why he was unwilling to engage with Alex's hypothetical.
Because I'm certainly not against hypothetical examples. I use hypothetical examples all the time. I mean, my problem during the debate with Alex was that he was using metaphysically impossible hypotheticals, or hypotheticals that completely changed the nature of human beings such that we're not talking about human beings anymore. So one of them was, suppose people couldn't die. I'm not going to entertain the idea of, suppose things don't have the natures that they have, right? Suppose a bird doesn't have wings, or suppose, as one person put it in the comments on the channel, suppose a triangle has 4 sides instead of 3. Now, let's, proceed to try to figure out some geometrical principles on this basis. It just doesn't make any sense. So I know that the history of philosophy is littered with these things. Plato talks about the ring of Gyges, and suppose you were invisible and undetectable and you could get away with anything, or and if I were to put that into the modern terms, suppose the bank robber gets to the islands, but he robs the bank, but he's invisible and undetectable, so he can't get caught, et cetera, et cetera. We're not dealing with reality if we accept that as some kind of a premise.
Even the examples Craig gives to show the uselessness of thought experiments can immediately be shown to be anything but useless. The ring of Gyges, as conceived by Plato, is something every child can understand the utility of, and many of you have surely thought about it yourself. What would I do if I were invisible? Even though it's metaphysically impossible to become invisible, The thought experiment is excellent at revealing someone's desires, shorn of any societal repercussions. The man whose first impulse is to use his new superpower to go into the women's bathroom undetected is very different from the man who would rather help the police uncover organized crime. Craig says that he has nothing against hypotheticals per se, only the ones that are metaphysically impossible. To this, I would say that if one wants to reject the hypothetical, this excuse is always available. What is metaphysically impossible is not always as obvious as Craig would have you believe. In fact, I can conceive quite easily of a future in which advanced technology allows for something like the ring of Gyges to be possible. Craig compares Alec's thought experiment to the absurdity of a triangle with 4 sides.
Suppose a triangle has 4 sides instead of 3.
The difference is that a triangle with 4 sides is actually a contradiction and can therefore be dismissed as a hypothetical. Craig can't just dismiss Alec's hypothetical without first demonstrating that there's something contradictory about it. I find it quite troublesome when a philosopher can't see the value in hypotheticals, as they are such an important tool for testing new ideas in a different framework, or for pointing out inconsistencies in a theory. One reason Craig might have refused the hypothetical is that it very aptly shows the flaw in his argument. I would argue that it's not life, but rather consciousness that establishes the existence of values. The reason being that it's entirely imaginable for a person to go through a situation so horrible that death is of more value than life. There are situations where it would actually be immoral to keep someone alive if it's only to prolong their agony. There are plenty of torture devices from the Middle Ages designed to kill as slowly as possible, in comparison to which the guillotine was getting off easy.